What's up?
Now just recording a podcast. What's up with you?
Oh, not too much. You know what, though?
What?
You need a counselor.
Thanks, so do you.
I do need a counselor. You're right. Welcome to You Need a Counselor podcast. We are therapists and a behavioral health counselor who are here to tell you exactly why you need a counselor, although today is more about why I need a counselor. And so we're going to change it up a little bit today. We're going to talk about a new topic that actually, we're not prepared for. I just kind of sprung this on Chrissa like 5 minutes ago. But we'll share more about that in a minute. But I'm Julie Johnson. We are with Heart and Solutions. We're a strength-based counseling agency here in Iowa.
I'm Chrissa. I am the Vice President of Heart and Solutions, and I am in charge of the BHIS department. BHIS is Behavioral Health Intervention Services. So we work with children with behavioral health counseling ages 4 to 18 on different behavioral health skills that they need to improve on in home. And this is You Need a Counselor. So the mission of our podcast is that we are designed for people curious about counseling, but who have barriers keeping them from experiencing the benefits of counseling. Our mission is to share stories about counseling, good, bad, and indifferent, and spread the message that everyone can benefit from mental health and behavioral health counseling services.
So we do post on Sunday nights. So we've been posting on Sunday nights. So save up your laundry. Don't do laundry throughout the week. That's terrible. Who wants to do that? Nobody. Don't do laundry through the week. Put away all your laundry on Sunday night. Get that fresh start. Put us on Sunday nights. We will be bringing out new episodes every Sunday night. You can find us on Spotify. You can find us on all the different podcast apps, sources. We are out there. We're through Anchor also. So check us out. And if you want to follow our Facebook page, we are You Need a Counselor podcast on Facebook and on Instagram. And we always post the latest episode on there, as well as some behind the scenes information and photos when we first record the episode, which is usually a little bit. It's a solo episode. And sometimes Chrissa and I will get together and we'll be like, okay, what are we going to talk about during our solo episode, and we kind of have a list going, and today we had planned to talk about medication and psychiatrists and what that's all about, but we're still people, we're counselors, but we are people. And so about 5-10 minutes ago, I got on the line with Chrissa and I said, hey, let's do something totally different for this podcast because I've got some stuff going on and I need a counselor. And if I need a counselor for this stuff, you guys, other people do too.
Mm-hmm.
It can't just be me. It can't be. So I know that other people need a counselor when they're going through these same types of things. Here's the situation. The first thing I want to do is apologize to anybody who's watching this on YouTube, because typically I try to do something about this situation, this hair, face situation, nails situation, okay?
He does not look bad.
YouTube will make that determination. So if you're listening to this on podcast and just audio, just know that I look fantastic. If you're watching it on YouTube, I apologize. And usually I try to do something about this situation. But anyway, this is what's going on today because in my household, we're experiencing a really challenging situation right now. We have 3 cats. And their names are Pants, the Wonder Cat, short for Pantaloon, and short for Miniature Panther. So we have all kinds of names that we call him. His official name is Miniature Panther, but we lengthen that to Pantaloon. We call him Pants generally, or we'll call him Piz Pants, which is not Piss Pants, it's Piz Pants with a Z.
Oh my gosh.
We call him all kinds of, Joe started calling him Pant Zuma, and now I'll call him Zuma sometimes, that has nothing to do with pants, but that's what I call him. I'll be like, hey, Zuma, back off, or whatever it is. We have another cat. So Pants has 3 legs. He is a cancer survivor. He had cancer on his hip and we had to remove his leg. And it did remove the cancer, so he is cancer-free. This was 2 years ago now, maybe. And he had to have a full amputation. So he has 3 legs and gets around better than any of the other cats. He he's doing great for himself, okay? So that's Pants. We've also got Teeny, who is currently has cancer. So she has bowel cancer right now. And about a year and a half ago, the vet told us, hey, she's got this bowel cancer. We give her about 6 months to live. Do you want to do chemo? And we said, no, like, leave that cat alone. Don't do chemo on her, like. So we decided not to go with chemo. We said, let's just let her be comfortable. She hates being in the car. She hates going to the vet. Let's just let her be at home and let nature do its thing. And that was a year and a half ago. So she's survived a year past, which, like, if you knew her personality, you wouldn't necessarily be surprised. She's like the most scrappy, like, survival cat of the bunch. So that's Teeny. And then Franny. So Franny's the one who we thought was going to outlive all three of them because she smells the worst. She poops on the floor. Like, she really, really tries to poop in the litter box. Like, she does her best. But she'll poop, like, right next to the litter box. And then she, like, scratches the floor, with her little paw to try to bury it.
Oh, gosh.
On the floor. There's nothing to bury it with. But, like, you can't be mad at her because she's trying so hard to use the litter box. Like, so, because of that inconvenience and kind of, like, annoyance, and also, like, she stinks. She has halitosis. She had to get, like, a ton of teeth removed a few years ago. And, like, they always, like, scrape her tongue and stuff at her appointments. So she's kind of a higher maintenance cat. 3 weeks ago or so, Franny started getting really, like, wheezy. She would take a deep breath and she would kind of, like, shudder as she would exhale that breath. And it seemed like she was having a hard time breathing. So we brought her into the vet and we said, okay, what's going on? They said it's her heart. They did an x-ray, they did a scan. They gave her these heart medication, which we've been, like, crushing up every night and putting in a baby syringe and, like, shoving in her. It's awful. And so we thought, okay, she was doing better, right? But today she's not doing good, you guys. So I've been checking on her all day. She's on the couch. She's got kind of, like, one eye open and one eye closed, and she's just, very peaceful and laying there. And so Monica's on cat hospice right now because she is, I said, very important that you sit here on the couch with her. When I thought about doing this podcast episode, we were planning to talk about medication, psychiatric medication, but I know myself, I'm not going to be able to talk about that today. Let's talk about this. I need a counselor for this stuff. And so does everybody who's listening. If you have been through a pet loss, oh my gosh, like,
horrible.
It's horrible. It is horrible. There are all different kinds of losses that we go through over the course of our lives. And when we think about grief, I think we tend to think about people, right? We don't always necessarily think about these other losses that we go through within our lives. And so I just thought, as a way to, if anybody is experiencing a pet loss, has a sick pet right now, and is going through all of the ups and downs of, like, going to the vet, trying to do treatments, deciding on treatments, that is valid grief. It's valid grief even before you lose the pet, right? When the pet's health starts to go down. So we just want to say to anybody who's listening, who's experiencing that is valid grief. There are a lot of things in our society that kind of try to invalidate that. And we'll talk a little bit about that. But basically, the message I want to say here to anybody that's listening is, if you have lost a pet and if you are grieving that is valid. That is totally okay. So one story I want to share is about my cat, Trixie. So we had Trixie, we got her in 2008, I think, and then she passed away in 2011. I had just gotten a brand new job in the counseling field, my first job in the counseling field, and I was traveling to Jefferson, which is like 2 hours away. My cat needed surgery, but they said it was routine, right? So I thought, okay, that's fine. I'm going to go to Jefferson. She ended up passing away during that surgery. At the time, my husband and I had just gotten married. we were going through all of this infertility treatments and infertility challenges. I think we talked about that a little bit on the previous week, last week, when we were talking to Erin about infertility and how hard that is. And this loss of this pet Trixie really complicated that for me, to the point where I started to have these irrational thoughts. At the time, they seemed perfectly rational, but when I think about them now, I go, okay, like I can tell I'm in a better place about this now than I was then. But I started to have these thoughts of like, I was to blame for my cat's death, right? Because I shouldn't have gone to work. Like I kept telling myself, like, I shouldn't have gone to Jefferson. I should have been home. And so that, coupled with the infertility situation, I got these ideas in my head about myself, about like, I don't have a child because I don't deserve a child, right? And like, if I can't take care of a cat, how am I going to take care of a kid? And so it just kind of all like intertwined in my mind. And I can't be the only one, right? That something like this has happened, where like we get these thoughts and we don't even sometimes notice them, like our thoughts just kind of happen naturally. And then it's not all the time that we go, oh, is that thought accurate? Like, is that real, or is that just me, having this kind of different perspective because it's all in my own head. With this cat, she was really special to me because I had not had a cat before. It was my husband and I, together. This was like our first animal together. That makes a big difference. That animal being just having that significance, I think. And I realized, so I've been on a really big decluttering spree here lately, like really intense. And we opened up this treasure chest where we found that we had kept my cat Trixie's ashes. Now, she passed in 2011, and I never ever did anything with her ashes. I just kept them in this like treasure chest thing from Hobby Lobby. And when I saw them, I immediately wanted to just close the top of that box and like, not look at them anymore. Like, I don't want to see that, right? Like, I just wanted to forget that that's there. And then there were also photos of her that I came across, and I was like, no, I can't, right? So even though that happened in 2011, it was still really, really fresh for me, even though like my daughter is 4 now, right? That idea of like, am I a horrible cat mom? What does that say about, my parenting with my daughter now? All of those things just started to flood back in. So I knew that they had not been resolved. And so we decided in our decluttering, our goal is that when we come across something that has action attached to it that we've put off for 9 years, almost 10 years now, that we will make a plan for that item, right? And do something with it. And so a couple weekends ago, we went out there's a waterfall like 15 minutes from my house, which I did not realize that.
I just found that out too, that there was a waterfall near us.
It's so nice. Is it the one in Gladbrook?
Yeah, and I've never heard of it. And Connor said it, and I was like, oh.
I'll send you pictures of it. It's so pretty. It's so pretty.
I'll have to go.
So we decided, okay, let's go out there, and also let's have a cat funeral. And so we had tried to go to Grimes Farm to do this cat funeral, but then the mosquitoes came out and were really, really bad. And we were like, cat funeral a different day. So then we ended up doing it at this waterfall. And we went off trail, and we dug a hole, and we looked at her pictures, and my daughter was part of it, which was really, really cathartic for me because she had never met this cat. Like, this cat means nothing to her, except that she's seen pictures of it, and she has a stuffed animal version of Trixie, and she calls it Trixie because that's what I always called it. And so, but like, even that stuffed animal was always just like a reminder, and it was like triggering sometimes when I would see that animal or she would say Trixie. And so we had this cat funeral, which was really, really cathartic. But I also realized, like, I need to be talking about this in counseling too, because it's all related to each other, ideas about who am I as a mom. Also, I realized in talking about this in counseling, realized that a lot of that also is tied in with like my biological parents, who I just recently reconnected with in February, but who I had been separated from for the last 34 years. And not knowing, before Monica was born, what kind of mom would I be in that first year? And what kinds of things might take her away from me, right? The way that I was kind of separated from my biological parents. So I think that all of that just really tied together. And this pet loss was such an integral part of it. And it's not something that I ever would have connected on my own, right? Like, okay, my cat died 9 years ago. Like, I would not have thought that that would play into my reunification with my biological parents and, my parenting with my daughter and all of these things, but it really, really does. It's something that, it tells me and reminds me all the time, I need a counselor, because I otherwise would not have ever thought about those things and how they connect with each other.
Last summer, our family dog passed away. So we got him when I was a junior in high school. So I was 16. Jack was his name, Jack the yellow dog. For some reason, we called him Jack the yellow dog. He was a big fluffy yellow dog. But yeah, he passed away. I'm going to cry on the podcast.
It's okay too. I haven't even talked about Franny about today. That's where my tears are going to start. Yeah. Nope.
Yeah. So he was 14, I think, 14, 13. And he wasn't doing well for a while. And my parents took him into the vet, and then he got put down like that day at the vet. None of my siblings, I have 9 siblings, none of us got to say goodbye. So I think that just made it harder for us. And obviously, pet loss is a big deal. I'm crying on the podcast about it. Yeah. And having that closure, he was like a sibling to us because we all grew up with him. I have siblings who, like, he was their only dog they ever had. Like they were born when he was a puppy. So super strange now that we don't have him. We have another dog. My family has one other dog. So, change for her. My parents have moved to New Mexico since then, which has been weird. Like now when we go to visit them, Jack's not there. So yeah, it's just been a huge family change and adjustment for all of us. I think especially since we weren't able to, none of us got to say goodbye. They ended up putting him down right away at the vet that day, and the kids were at school and we were all at work. So definitely hard to have that family member. They are a family member.
They are.
Pass away, not getting that closure from it. Yeah.
They are. I mean, you're so right in that the animals we grow up with, they were there on all of our milestones, they were there, they're part of our history. With your parents moving, things, if that's a big change anyway, right? Versus okay, they used to live around the corner from you.
Yeah, seriously.
Now they live in New Mexico, which is so different. It changes all the routine. And then, Daisy being there is okay, there is that, which still feels like coming home.
Yeah.
Right? But it then again, accentuates probably the Jack not being there.
That one of them is missing. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think you're so right in the saying goodbye part, the closure part is so challenging because you didn't get to say goodbye to Jack. And I mean, you'd known him. When we think about how long animals live, it's some of those animals we've known way longer than a lot of the people.
Than our siblings. Yeah.
Seriously. And so we feel that. And it's I was reading a couple articles about pet loss. So I just, in order to talk about this today, I kind of just looked up why should we take pet grief and pet loss seriously? And it's because it is a major loss. What we're identifying here, a couple of the points there were loss of identity. It's when you ask a kid, tell me about yourself, what are the major things they talk about? They'll tell you how many siblings they have. They'll tell you, their name and their favorite color, and then tell you about their pets. And being able to say, for me, for the last 7 years, we've been a 3-cat family. I have a mug from Alyssa, one of our BS supervisors, that says I was normal 3 cats ago, right? Which I don't know how accurate that mug is because I don't know how normal I was 3 cats ago, but we're 3 cat household. When people say, oh, tell us a weird fact about you, a lot of times that's my go-to, right? And when Franny passes, which I do think is going to be in the next day or so here, we're a 2 cat family. And just that loss of, who we are. We were on team meeting this morning and I was talking about my cats, right? Like not super relevant to the conversation, but I talk about them all the time. And for Franny to be sick right now and to be on the couch, and I feel like we did everything we could for her, but we can't control what happens with our pets and with our pets' health. But I think that because we're caregivers to those pets, that we want to so badly. We want to control that and make it better for them, because in a lot of ways, there are kids. Like anybody who, like there are some people out there, like my husband's dad was this way. He did not see animals as anything, right? Like it's kind of that, like, sometimes you get that like older farm mentality, right? Of like, okay, animals are just food, or they're like pests and annoyances. But the truth is, anybody that considers themselves a dog mom or a cat mom or a guinea pig mom or whatever it is, there's a real emotional connection there that I think that society doesn't always acknowledge and doesn't always allow us to talk about, And I think that really makes it even harder to go through a pet loss on our own without that support, because not everybody gets it. Like not everybody understands that this is a major loss, especially when it's like a cat. I don't know why, but like I feel like people kind of get the dog man's best friend a little bit more than cats. And one thing I like about cats is they are really low maintenance. Like they don't care about what you're doing, but they're still your pet. They're still your baby. It does make it a lot more complicated. So that idea of like loss of identity, I think you're really right on with talking about that. Like he was the 11th sibling, right, in your household. And you've known him longer than some of your siblings, which is funny. And then one of the other things that it talked about was just that like there isn't the societal support. Like when my cat had to have surgery, it didn't feel okay to me to say I need to take time off work to attend my cat's surgery, right? Because even saying that out loud sounds weird to me, even though I wanted to. And I really went back and forth between like, I should not go to Jefferson. Like I should not be 2 hours away. I should be home with her. And if it was my kid having surgery, there's no question. Like I would never be like, can I take the day off because my kid's having surgery? Like I would be there.
You absolutely would.
Like absolutely would, right? And there's no boss in the world that's going to be like, sorry, you can't like go attend your kid's surgery, right? But with it being a cat, it felt a lot different, and I didn't feel like I was able to say to my boss at the time, I need to take this day off. I had clients scheduled for that day that were also depending on me because I only went out there once a week. And I was new to the position and I wanted to make a good name for myself. And I wanted to, show these clients that they could depend on me. And so I made that compromise because it was a pet. And I think that really complicated the situation a lot more, because if it had been a child, I would have been there, right? There wouldn't have been this guilt associated with it that was like, I should have been there with her, or I should have called in, not sick, but I should have called in and said I can't go in that day. And and that I didn't, and knowing that I made that choice. But I think I made that choice out of, again, like societal norm, right?
Yeah.
Like it still sounds weird to attend a cat surgery instead of going to
Yeah.
but it, it stuck with me. And I think for you too, like in your situation with Jack, like because it's a dog. Now, if that had been like a grandpa or something, it probably would have been a little different. But even with animals, like we can't say goodbye. We can't talk to them on the phone.
I know. That's what makes it so sad too. You don't know, like, they don't know what's going on, or that you can't communicate with them, or we can talk to them, but do they know what we're saying? And they can't talk back. So yeah, I definitely think that makes it harder for us too.
It is. Like Franny keeps staring at me with her one eye that's open. Like she's got, and I tried to like pet her face so that it would like, I was like, close your eye, like just relax, because I want her to be comfortable. And Monica's so cute. Monica's making play food for her and like putting it next to her. So wait, I did take a picture of her because she's wrapped up in all these towels. And then she's got like all of these plates of play food like around her because Monica made her all this food. And it's, like we're trying to make her as comfortable as possible, but she keeps looking at me out of her, one eye. And I keep telling her, you're a good cat. And I'm sorry I made fun of you so much for your halitosis, but like you smell, and, like but that's part of who she was. She had so much personality. Because she stank, and when you put her in the car ever, she was the loudest cat I have ever heard in the car. Like she would go, yeah, whoa, yeah, whoa. Like it wasn't a meowing, it was like, yeah, whoa. And when we first adopted her from the Animal Rescue League, we brought her home in the crate and we were like, oh no, what did we do? Because she just, yeah, whoa, yeah, whoa. Like, oh no, is this going to be our lives now? Like, is she going to just do this all night long? But she only did it in the car, which thank goodness for that. But, there's all these like weird things that like make up that pet's personality. And, they're not just a dog and they're not just a cat. They're Jack, or they're Franny or they're Trixie. And I think that because not everybody necessarily understands that or thinks that way, or even with the people that we know have experienced a pet loss or are a cat mom or a cat dad or a dog mom or a dog dad, like you never know exactly how like extensively that person kind of understands what it is that you're going through, right? Because all the pets are so different. So yeah, one of the articles I was reading, and I'll link all the articles in the show notes, but it just talks about like it makes it complicated grief. So grief in itself, we process through it. There is an emotional, natural reaction to grief that we are able to do as humans, and we can go through this process, which is the grieving process. It never goes away, but that grief, if allowed to process through us, it does process through, and we learn how to cope with that. We learn how to live with that. In Trixie's case, that was stuck grief. That grief was stuck in me. It did not process through. And I knew that because 10 years later, I still hadn't buried her. I still had, these pictures that I didn't want to look at. And I still didn't want to have funeral for her, want to have, a ceremony for her. There were those blockages, and talking to a counselor about that and being able to kind of see where all these pieces come together and why, that was important to me and why it's okay that was important and why it's also okay to grieve a cat and important to grieve a cat was really, really important. But nobody talks about that. Nobody says it's okay to grieve your cat. Like nobody says that. And so I think it's just important that, if you're listening to this episode, that if you need a counselor because you're grieving your dog or you're grieving your cat, that's okay. It's good to do that. It's necessary sometimes to get that out. And the things that complicate it are those cultural norms of like, well, there are people who think it's just a cat. Like, it's just, a dog. But they are so much more than that for so many of us. Another point that some of these were just like our routines too. So Chrissa, you talked about this a little bit in terms of like coming home, part of that coming home to your parents' house, like feeling like, oh, I'm home, was having Jack there, because it reminds you of like when you're a teenager, it reminds you of when you're like in middle school. And that is a disruption to that routine.
Yeah.
And with Franny, okay, this is gonna sound weird, but like with John, I'm not gonna be picking up cat poop anymore off the floor. Okay.
And you might be sad about it.
Like, that's weird, because I'm like, I don't enjoy the picking up, right? But at the same time, like, that's part of my routine. I know that's gross. Now you know way more about me than you want to, but like I do yoga, like I do workouts in the morning, right? And I do it on my yoga mat. And so when I come downstairs in the morning, like that's the first thing I do, because I don't want to be doing that near cat poop. And our daily routine gets changed up. And I think it's probably even more so with dogs, because we have that routine of like, let the dog out and walking the dog and feeding the dog all the time, where cats are like, our cats are pretty low maintenance, so we just put food out and they eat and drink it and all of that. But even just something as simple as like, yeah, when I sit in this chair, Franny comes and sits here and I put a blanket over her. And that's a routine that is disrupted when we have a loss. So the other thing is that like that caretaking role, when we have a loss of a pet, especially like, well, any pet really, but if our pet has been sick for a long time too, part of our routine and part of like our self-identity is taking care of that pet. And caretaking for others, actually, there's a lot of research on nurturing, that when we nurture other people and animals, that we actually get that nurturing for ourselves too as we're doing it. And so caretaking for pets is so important when we need nurturing, and like we can't always control if we're going to get nurtured by other people. Like we really can't control that. But we can control whether we nurture our pets or we nurture other people. And we get those same benefits when we're doing the nurturing as we do when we're being nurtured. So the loss of a pet can really, really take that away from us, right? Like that ability to nurture something and care about something. And I think that with COVID, especially now, we're so isolated from the people in our lives that our pets play even more of an important role for us.
Yeah, because we can only ever, we're all at home, we're all stuck at home. So yeah, we're spending way more time with our pets than we were. And like, especially like dogs, like that's kind of the only way at one point we could even really get out of the house, like when everything first shut down, to take dogs on walks to get out of the house, because otherwise we're going kind of stir crazy. So yeah, for sure during COVID, I definitely think that's gotten even more so, especially while working from home too now, even more. So we're all stuck in the home with them all day. My dog's literally like right next to me right now.
Yeah, YouTube viewers, you'll probably see Bandit on here at some point, or hear him I usually close the door so that Pants won't come in here and like sit on me, but they're always kind of around. And yeah, like with being stuck in the house all the time, I mean, I'm sure our pets love it because we're home more. But it definitely has given us, if we look at that as an opportunity, it's like, yeah, we've had more opportunity to be around our animals more of the time. And especially with dogs who need that companionship, being able to be with them more often, Also, I mean, there's so many studies about how pets reduce anxiety. And I know for so many of our clients too, adults and kids, like petting an animal is a huge coping skill for anything that's happening, and a way to reduce anxiety and a way to reduce anger and frustration is to be able to pet that animal and kind of feel that like I keep wanting to say unrequited love, but that's not what I mean. Hopefully, I mean, if you have cats, maybe.
Yeah.
But unconditional.
Yes. There you
Yeah,
go.
that unconditional, like positive regard. I mean, that is the basis of counseling, unconditional positive regard. And if you go to most counselors nowadays, there's a base of person centered or client centered counseling, which means we're going to do unconditional positive regard. If you go into a counselor, it doesn't matter if that person agrees with you, doesn't agree with you, lives their life the way you do, lives your life differently. That's your counselor. So when they're in there with you, whatever you say, whatever you're thinking, even if those thoughts and feelings are not necessarily serving you well, like the thoughts about like, okay, my cat died, so that means I'm not a good enough mom, right? Like that thought is not helpful to me at all. but like, but when I said that to my counselor, she's not like, well, you're wrong. She's like, okay, let's talk about that more. And that's really, really helpful and necessary. And so, the same way that counselors give us that kind of unconditional positive regard and support, animals do that too. They do that same thing, like my cats do not care what I look like, unlike YouTube. I'm calling you out, YouTube. No, but they don't care. Like they don't care what I look like. They don't care what I'm doing. They don't care what I'm thinking. They don't care if I'm like yelling. They don't care. They just want to be around us and they just want to give us support. And so the loss of that unconditional support is so, so challenging and so hard, and makes the need for a counselor during those times even, I think, more magnified, right? Because a counselor really can give us that unconditional support. And with dogs and cats, there's no strings attached to anything, like they just love you because you're their person. They don't care. And counselors are the same way. They're going to support you because you are a valuable human being that's in their office. They're going to support you in whatever you do. And so, yeah, definitely, like for me, I needed a counselor when I lost my cat, and it took me 9 years to start to process that in counseling. And so, I guess the other thing is like it's not too late. If you have experienced a pet loss that you do find like pops up for you in other areas of life, right? Or like you find things remind you of that or remind you of that loss, or you avoid certain things because of that, right? Like when I was decluttering, that area around that treasure chest thing, that was like one of the last things to get even looked at because I knew what was in there, right? I didn't want to go in there. I knew what was there, but then I knew, okay, the fact that I am avoiding that means that it is something I really, really need to process out. So yeah, the other, let's see, yeah, they talked about the identity. They talked about the routines. We talked about the nurturing aspect, and then the impacts of spending time with that unconditional love and support. So important. We've shared a lot about ourselves today that listeners may or may not have wanted to hear, but there it is. So all of that to say that like this episode isn't about like us and our specific what happened with us and our pets. Our hope really with this episode is that anybody who's listening, if you have experienced a pet loss, that is a real loss. Don't let anybody, including yourself, because 9 years I told myself it didn't matter, right? Don't let anything or anybody, including yourself, invalidate your experience and the grief that you're experiencing. And go find a counselor, or if you're seeing a counselor, like bring that up to your counselor. Start talking about that if you can, if it's still in there for you, because I didn't realize how much it was impacting my life until I started talking about that. And then my counselor was like, oh, how does that fit in with your reunification with your biological parents? So I was like, oh gosh, okay.
Didn't even think about that one.
Yeah, we're going there, are we? All right. And so it just really, it really can all connect. And it's such a like tangled web of thoughts and feelings that we get into. And then sometimes, like for me, I'll just go like, I don't want to deal with that, right? Like I'm just going to close that off and not think about it. But counseling gives you that safe place to do it also. And that place where you can like, when I'm on that counseling call, I'm going to talk about these things. And then when I'm not on the counseling call, I don't have to think about it if I don't want to. I can put that in that counseling container and not think about it through the week if I don't want to. Yeah, we hope that this is helpful to somebody. Just know that you're not alone. Like Chrissa and I have both gone through this. I almost said recently, but like Trixie was not very recent, but it's still, the processing of it. Yeah. And even now, with Franny being sick, just knowing that that's coming, that grief is already setting in, right? It's the reason I couldn't talk about psychiatric meds today. Sorry, if you wanted to hear about that. I couldn't talk about that today, right? I feel like this needs to be said and talked about more. So if you have a story you want to share with us about a pet loss, if you have questions for us about, how to bring this up to your counselor or what your story means, or even if you just want to share your story anonymously with somebody that understands. And like Chrissa and I, we are pet people. We get it.
We tell like every applicant that applies here that we love our pets.
Yeah, sometimes like they'll get on the interview and they'll be like, oh, I'm sorry, my dog's here. And we're like, good, your dog was invited.
Yeah, don't apologize.
And so if you have anything like that you want to share your story, message us on our Facebook link or private message us on Instagram. We won't share that story if you don't want us to, but if you need somebody to share that with and help you get connected with a counselor who's going to understand, let us know. So you can find us on Facebook at You Need a Counselor podcast, and you can find us on Instagram as well there. So we are, again, Heart and Solutions. If you're in Iowa, you can likely do telehealth counseling still, or you can do in-person sessions at one of our 9 locations. And we also do in-home sessions for kids. I know we didn't talk a ton about kids coping with pet loss, but it's very, very challenging watching my daughter's 4. Watching her, one, go through the cat funeral, right? And I was nervous about that. I was like, what do I have to? And then also watching her watch our current cat as she's dying, right? And she said to me today, I don't want Franny to die. And I said, I don't either. I don't want her to, but this is a part of life. And for her at this age to be able to experience that, to be able to experience, taking care of this cat in her older years, and talking a lot because the life that she had in our house, which was extremely comfortable, by the way. I'm very sometimes jealous of our cats' lives because they are extremely comfortable animals. But, we know that she had a good life. And so if you've got a kiddo too, please get them some support if you do lose an animal, because we know how hard it is as adults, but as kids, there's so much more complication to that. They don't fully understand what's happening. The kids are a lot more susceptible to making connections that might not be there. So they might think like, well, I gave the cat too many treats and then the cat got sick, right? Or like, well, the cat ate fish, and if I eat fish, am I going to get sick? Right? So we don't want to have, we want to be able to have kids have a place to share those thoughts and express those feelings that they might be having. And counseling can be so helpful with that. So if you're looking for in-home counseling too, for your kids who have experienced a loss, sometimes those losses, actually a fair amount of times, those losses translate into behavioral challenges. So, your kiddo might usually be listening to you, and then all of a sudden they are, yelling at you, or all of a sudden they're crying at night. And sometimes we don't always connect because maybe we lost the pet 6 months ago, right? But for kids, developmentally, it might take them a little while before those symptoms start to kind of set in, or they may make a connection in their mind somewhere that as adults we know, like, oh no, it wasn't because you hugged the cat too tight, right?
Mhm.
But as kids, they don't always understand that. And so being able to give them counseling can be so helpful for that. So if you're a parent and your child has gone through this, or your family has gone through this, just know that you don't have to be alone in that you can seek counseling and support for that. And if you're in Iowa, we'll do that in homes. You don't even have to go anywhere for that. So you can call us at 800-531-4236 for Heart and Solutions. You can also find us at our website, heartandsolutions.net. And you can find us at our Facebook page and on Instagram. Facebook page is Heart and Solutions, and then Instagram is iHeart Solutions. So reach out to us. We really want to support you. We are, like, for the majority, we are pet people. And so if you are concerned about, is my counselor going to get it, that this is a real thing, they're going to get it. If you call us, they will definitely understand.
So when we post, like Julie mentioned at the beginning, we post on Sundays at 5. So save up your laundry or your chores for the week. So you can listen to us Sundays while you are going through your laundry, and or Monday morning while you're driving to work or driving to school or getting ready for the week, to help you remember to call your counselor. Save us up for that as well.
Absolutely. So you can always send us questions, pet related or not, to the Facebook page, You Need a Counselor podcast, or on Instagram as well.
Okay, so I'm Chrissa Brown.
And I'm Julie Johnson, and we need a counselor.
And so do you.
Bye.
Bye.